Hey, welcome back to the Too Fast channel. In today's how-to video, I'm going to show you how to remove the glove box door handle from a Volkswagen EOS model year 2008. This would be a Mark 5, should be applicable to most Mark 5 Volkswagens. So what you're going to need to do this job, this is what I needed. You're going to need a T20 Torx wrench. This is a little L bracket type of torque wrench. This is short. This is probably about 2.5 inches. You're going to need something like this. It's the T20 Torx. You're also going to need this. This is a little magnet with a piece of wire duct taped on the end of it. Now I got this magnet off of a small flat blade screwdriver. Some small flat blade screwdrivers have a little magnet in the end, and this one just pulls right out, and that's where I got the magnet from. But I highly suggest you have something like this if you're going to approach this job. You're going to need it. So I just have a little piece of wire and the magnet's duct taped on. Now this is a typical problem with these latches breaking, and in my case, this I already have this latch removed, obviously, because I already went through all of this. The sections right here have a tendency to break. It's thin plastic. It's old. It gets weak. Mine is broke here and here. I did try plastic epoxy to epoxy this back together, and super glue, and it wasn't working. So I noticed this is a black handle. I noticed that black handles don't seem to be available new anymore. You can get a polished aluminum one though. So I'll put the part number for that in the video description. But that's what I'm going to have to order. I don't have one yet. I've just got through the process of removing this, and I need to order one. So this isn't the complete assembly. This is the complete assembly right here. This little mechanism that kind of rotates back and forth. And of course, with this piece broken, this kind of popped off when I removed the whole handle. There's not really anything to lose from this piece. But, you know, I'll talk about the lock removal at the end of the video. Let's get moving a little bit more. So the best way I found to do this, let's see if we get some light here. Alright, so there we go. Now right here where my finger is a small hole, and this is where you're going to use that T20 wrench, and you're going to put it in. Now the screw isn't straight in, it's kind of in an angle, so you got to kind of put it in at a little bit of an angle like this, and feel around until you can hear metal against metal, and then make sure that the wrench gets seated correctly in the screw, and unscrew it. Now what's going to happen is once you get it unscrewed, you're going to have your other hand over here holding the handle. Once the screw's undone, the handle will come out, and the screw's going to fall in here. And there's really no way around that. I mean, this is magnetized, but it's not strong enough to hold on to the screw. I magnetized this before I used it. It's just not strong enough. So the screw's going to fall out, and it's going to be sitting right in here. I have this tilted up a little bit with my leg so you can see it, but ideally you want this fully opened. And when the screw falls out, don't close this, because the screw will fall down in there. So when the screw falls down in there, that's where our little tricky magnet tool is going to come into play. Because if you reach up where my finger is here, you can reach your finger in through this hole, and you can feel where the screw is. It falls into this little channel. So you can take your little magnet tool, feed it up in through that hole, and move it around until it grabs the screw, and the magnet is very strong, so it'll be strong enough to lift the screw out. And you can see there's the screw right there. The torque screw attached to the magnet is very, very strong, so it'll grab it and pull it out. Otherwise, it's going to be a big pain in the butt to try and get that screw out, especially if you tilt it up like this and the screw falls all the way down there. So that's what I did. I got this out. I got everything apart fairly easy. Originally, when I did this, I didn't have the magnet, and I came up with the magnet idea and put this together real quick and went in and grabbed the screw. So I'm going to save you all the hassle that I had to go through by letting you know you need to get the magnet out ahead of time. All right, so depending upon what's broken on your latch, in my case, this back piece, there's nothing broken, so this is going to be reused. Now, what you can buy from the dealer, like I mentioned, is the polished silver aluminum one. I'll leave the part number in the description. And it's just this piece. There's no lock on it, and there's no backing piece. So your backing piece needs to be removed, set aside, and then you need to remove this lock. Now, here's a tricky thing with the lock. I would recommend putting a piece of tape over the lock so it doesn't fall out. There's 4 little plastic tabs here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this piece really is not usable, so you can just cut those plastic tabs off. Or in my case, I just used a little heat gun. I put some heat on it and I bent them back. And once they're bent back, this lock is free to come out. Now what you got to be very careful about with this lock is there's 3 tumblers and 3 springs. And the tumblers are held into the lock via this hole. So if you just cut these tabs off and the lock falls straight out, well, guess what? Those 3 tumblers and those 3 springs are going to pop out and go all over the place. Don't ask me how I know that. So put a piece of tape on there, hold the lock into place, remove those tabs, take this over to a nice safe work area, remove the tape, and remove the lock very slowly. And if you use a flat blade screwdriver, you can push down on those tumblers so they will come out. And you can see the tumblers, the orientation of the tumblers. And you can position this so the tumblers won't fall out and remove the lock safely. Now the tumblers are going to be loose, so if you turn the lock assembly one way or the other, they can fall out. So once you remove the lock, be very careful with the tumblers and the springs. And make note of where each of the tumbler, well, I'm calling them tumblers. I don't know what they are. The specific terminology is for them, but they're little metal, like a little slice of bread, a little metal slice of bread. That's about the closest description I can give you for that, with a spring on the bottom. So I'm not a lock expert. So make sure they don't pop out, you don't lose them, and you don't get the orientation mixed up. You can safely remove it, remove the lock, keep everything in place, and then put it in the new piece. And the installation of it is basically the reverse of the removal, except you don't have to mess with these tabs. On the new one, you'll just put the lock in, make sure the tumblers are pushed down, push the lock into place, and there's an outer ring around this part of the lock, and it will just pop through those little tabs and be locked into place. And the last thing to do is obviously make sure you put your key in there and turn it and make sure that it works. Once that's done, you can put the plastic piece back on, and you may have to use a flat blade screwdriver and pry down on this area a little bit to get that popped in there on both sides. Just make sure that it's working, and then you'll be able to go back in and reinstall it. Now obviously I haven't reinstalled this just yet, so you're going to have to wait for the next part of the video where I actually get the replacement piece and put this together and go to install it, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, welcome back. We're picking up where we left off with replacing the Volkswagen EOS glove box door handle. It's been over 30 days, probably close to 40 days these handles were not in stock anywhere, had to come from Germany, and it took forever. Like mentioned earlier in the video, you can't order these in colors anymore. So the only thing you can order is the polished silver one. So this is basically what you get. Runs about $30 US. It doesn't come with a lock, a screw, or anything else. You got to reuse all of that from your existing glove box handle. Now, if you've watched any of my other previous videos, you know that all the silver trim in my car has been covered with carbon fiber wrap. So I'm not going to put this on as is. I'm going to wrap this with some 3M carbon fiber wrap as well. We're going to do that before we install a lock. This is the existing glove box door handle. It's already been prepped. I've already got these little hooks, or these little clips right here have been bent up so the lock will slide out. That's why the tape's on here, so the lock doesn't fall out and I lose the tumblers. So this is ready to come straight out and go right in there. And it should snap right into place and we should be good to go. So I'm going to wrap this, and of course I've got to get some of the carbon fiber wrap inside here, and hopefully the lock will still fit because the 3M carbon fiber wrap is kind of thick. I may have to trim it down, which I'm not going to bore you with, but I'll do that off camera here. And what we're going to need for that is some 3M wrap. So this is a little piece of leftover 3M stuff, wrapping material that I used for the interior trim. We're going to use a smoothing tool. This is also made by 3M. You've got a hard plastic edge here. It's not sharp, and then you've got another hard edge here with felt on it. These are used by industry professionals for wrapping cars. It works great for wrapping trim pieces. And I'm going to use a heat gun. The wrap is much more, you can manipulate it much better if it's warm. It can be stretched and so on. So anyway, also need a sharp X-Acto knife. And one thing I should mention, if you decide you're going to wrap anything with carbon fiber, I don't know if it makes any difference to you, but I like my patterns all to be going in the same direction. All of the carbon fiber pieces I've wrapped in my car have the carbon fiber lines going up and to the right. So I actually, when I initially did it, I wrapped one piece incorrectly and it bugged me to no extent. So I took it off and redid it so everything goes in the right direction. So pay attention to the direction if that's of importance to you. All right, so let me get this wrapped and then we'll be back to take a look at the final result. Okay, this wrapping took about 30 minutes because they're getting this material around these corners is tricky, to say the least. Use the heat gun, you use your little spudger tool. I've got an X-Acto knife to make slits in the material, and you don't want a lot of extra material on the back. You can see I've trimmed away most all of it. There's a small little bit of material around the back, and it's the less material you have on the back, the easier it is to work out the wrinkles. And what I'm actually going to do to make sure that the process of reaching your fingers in and pulling on this does not pull up this material, I'm going to run some super glue around the inside of this to make sure that this material doesn't get pulled up. If this was if this piece was fitting flush in the dash and you didn't have to stick your fingers behind it, probably wouldn't be an issue. But given the unique nature of this particular latch, I'm going to run some super glue around this to make sure that material doesn't pull up. And that's basically how that turns out. So 30 minutes of effort and a little bit of profanity, and there you go. So let's go ahead and move on to putting the lock in. All right, let's move on to transplanting the lock. Again, like I mentioned, I've already got these little 4 tabs pried up, so this lock assembly will come out. First time I did it, I lost one of the tumblers and the spring, got that put back in and confirmed that things were working as it's supposed to. Okay, so things lock and unlock correctly. And let's see if I can do this without losing any of the tumblers. Okay. When I initially pulled this out originally, the bottom tumbler fell out, and I managed to put it back in. This time when I pulled it out, I put my finger underneath it to hold the tumbler in place. And we'll just go ahead and slide this in. And you may have to push down on these tumblers a little bit. Now, I'm going to have to fiddle with this a little bit more, so instead of you wasting your time watching me, I'm going to do this off camera, and we'll be right back. Okay, the easiest way to do this is when you go to put this lock in here, slide the key in. The key will hold all of the tumblers recessed in place, and you can push this in, and that's the easiest way to do it. I was doing it the more complicated way. I also noticed that this little piece right here that turns is rubbing against this inner plastic piece right here. So it still turns, but it turns with a little bit more resistance than the old one did. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to just clean up that plastic a little bit with a small file. And I'm going to do that off camera, and I can do that with this lock in place. I don't need to remove it. So I'm going to take care of that, and we'll be on to installing this. Okay, before we get on to installing this again, we have to deal with the screw situation. If you remember earlier when I removed the screw that holds this lock into place, it of course fell off inside of the glove box door. So I made this little magnet retrieval tool to put in through the hole and grab the screw. Now the thing is using this tool and this screw, it's not magnetized, so the screw's not going to stay on the end. So what I have to do is I have to make sure this screw stays on the end of this tool so I can feed it in through the hole and get it started and screw it in and then remove the tool. So a couple of ideas. I could use a little dab of super glue to hold that on, but I think what I'm going to do is use just a little dab of hot glue. Hot glue is a little bit more forgivable than super glue. So I've got my hot glue gun, and I've got some Gorilla Glue sticks. So I'm going to put a little dab of hot glue in the opening, and then we're going to put our little torque wrench in there, and we're going to let that dry. And I actually have tested this already, and this should hold, and it will allow me to remove the tool. Once this is threaded in, I should be able to remove this tool without any issue. So hopefully this little trick works out. All right, let's move on to the inside of the car and see if we can get this installed. Okay, I apologize about the odd angle with the camera. I'm trying to sit in the passenger seat and get a decent view of the glove box at the same time. All right, so we've got our lock. We've got it in the locked position. I don't know if that makes any difference. I'm going to open up the glove box door, and you've got this hook that needs to go through this little hole, which you can't see, and then this needs to slide through right here, which you can't see that either. So I did play around with this a little bit, and it is a bit tricky. And what I ended up doing was, this is the latch that keeps the glove box closed. If we push that in, and we get down here like so, we've got to get the little hook in first. It is doable because I've already done it. Took it back out so I can do it on camera. Almost got it. Okay, there we go. Actually, that was in the unlocked position I originally had it. Okay, so it is working. Problem is without the screw, if you let go, it will come out. So I've got to hold on to this, or put a piece of tape over it, something to hold it in place. So now, and of course my legs and everything are in the way. I apologize for that. This is the best view I can get with the camera. So our Torx wrench with our screw that's held on with some hot glue. Our hole is right there, and we're going to go ahead and insert this in, and I'm going to be real gentle with this, and to make sure that I get it in the hole. And I was going to say, I don't want to bend it in one direction or the other, which I already did, and it popped, the glue popped off. Shouldn't be an issue. I believe I've got it started. The glue was basically just to hold the screw on the end of this Torx key so I could get it started. I'm going to have to reposition myself to get a better angle, but I do have it started. So I'm going to pause the camera and work on this, and we'll be right back.